In this video, I will explain what segments in Google Analytics are, how to use them, and a bunch of examples. If you are working with Google Analytics interface, this is a must-learn feature. Segments allow you to look at the subset of your data, and if you want, you can even compare multiple segments. The only place in Google Analytics where you can use segments is the Explore section. So let's go there. Then let's create a blank exploration. Let's say that I want to see how users with different devices perform. For example, I want to see how many users and how much revenue did I get from mobile devices against desktop users. So to do that, first we will need to create a table and add certain metrics and dimensions. So in the dimensions, I will click plus and add device category. Then select here, confirm, and then in metrics, I will select total users, and then some revenue metric, for example, purchase revenue, and then click confirm. Now I can double click on these items and they will be added to the exploration right here. This report right now is showing all users, but let's say that I want to see the numbers related only to traffic coming from the US. While I could technically use the filter, segments are much more powerful because they allow you to create more complex rules. And in fact, as I've said, you can also compare different segments. So to get started with segments, you can click plus in the segments section right here, and then look at the predefined segments, but in this case, none of them are useful to me. That's why I will create a new segment, and I want to include those users who are from the United States. When you try to build a segment, you are asked to select a type of the segment. You can choose either user segment, session segment, or event segment. Later in this video, I will explain what are the differences, but right now I will just select user segment. Then here, let's add a segment. So I will type country, and then it should exactly match, and then United States. This option right here is looking at when exactly was that visitor coming from the US. If you want to include those users who have at any point browsed your website from the US, then keep this option. Or alternatively, if you want to look only at the latest value of your visitors, then you can select right here. It means that if a visitor was browsing your site from one country and then from United States, then that user would be included if you select this option. But in my case, let's say that I want to look at United States at any point in time. Then click apply. Here on the right sidebar, you will see a preview of the approximate number, how many users will be included in this segment. And let's call this segment US and click apply. It will be created and it will be automatically added to the report right here. In this column, in the freeform exploration, you can add up to 4 segments at a time. If you want, you can also compare one segment's performance against another segment's performance. For example, we can look at the US data and compare it against all users. To do that, you can click on the plus right here, and out of the box, in every Google Analytics property, you can also select the all users segment. So just click here, confirm, and then you can either drag it right here or just double click it and it will be added. Now we have 2 different colors. This will make things a bit easier to distinguish where each segment is. So here we can see the total revenue, and here we see that most of that revenue is actually coming from the US. Now, alternatively, you could build a different table where you look at US traffic and compare it against non-US traffic. Let's do that. I can click the plus right here, then create new segment, user segment, again, select country, and then we should select does not exactly match United States. Then click apply and call it non-US, and then apply again. Then I can remove the all users segment, and this is what I have.
By the way, I release Google Analytics or Google Tag Manager tutorials every week. If you want consistent flow of fresh knowledge and to stay up to date, then subscribe to this channel. It will help us a lot.
Segments are available not only in the freeform exploration, but in a bunch of other types of explorations as well. For example, you can use segments in funnels. Let me just show you a quick example. So I can click the plus right here, click funnel exploration, and here you have segment comparisons. So I can drag the US and the non-US traffic, and then quickly add, let's say, just a couple of steps. So I will click here, and then we'll select page view. And then the next step is the purchase. In practice, this of course does not make a lot of sense, but I just want to show you how that looks from the visual standpoint. So once you have these two steps added, click apply, and then you can see that at the first step, we have this many US users and this many non-US users. Now let's look at some features in the segment builder. So first I will go back to my freeform exploration, and then I will click plus in the segments and then create new segment. So here you can either build segments from scratch, and there are 3 types, or you can use one of the templates right here. But personally, I usually find myself building segments from scratch. So the question is, what is the difference between user segment, session segment, and event segment? And that is related to scope. Let's say that there is a user tracked by Google Analytics, and that user generated 2 sessions. The first session includes 2 page view events and 1 click. And then the next day, the user comes back and views a page, adds a product to a cart, and then starts a checkout. So if we want to create a user segment where an add to cart event is added as a condition, which means that a user has added any product to a cart, then that segment will include both sessions. Because we are looking for users who have added any product to a cart at any point in time. Even though this session does not contain the add to cart button, user segment is not looking at separate sessions. It is looking for all sessions of that same user. So if at least one session contains the add to cart event, then the data of all sessions of that particular user will be included in the segment. Now, if we look at the same example, and now we are creating a session segment, basically telling Google that we want to include those sessions where add to cart event was generated, then the session segment will include data only of those sessions. If at least one event is add to cart, then all events of that session will be included in the report. And then the third type of the segments is event segment. Here, we are looking only at particular events. So if we want to create an event segment where event name is add to cart, that segment will include only one event in this particular context where the event name is add to cart. All other events of that user will be excluded. So if you look at the names of these segment types, they are quite intuitive. Here we are including all user events if at least one event matches a condition. Here the segment will include all events of the session if at least one event in the session matches our conditions. And then here we cherry pick only events that match our conditions. Let me build a very simple report where you will see the difference in those numbers. So first of all, maybe I will go to a new freeform exploration report and then add a dimension, which is called event name. And then let's add a metric, which is called event count. Now I will add event name and event count to the report. Now let's build 3 segments. The first one is the user segment, where the condition is add to cart event. Let's call this add to cart user. Then let's create another segment, which is session segment. And again, I will select add to cart. And let's call this like this and click apply. And then I will create the final segment, which is event segment. Again, let's pick add to cart and add to see event and apply. So what you will notice is that most events are in the user segment because in this case, this segment includes also those sessions that do not even contain the add to cart event. But if a user at least once in this particular period added a product to a cart, then all those events will be included in this particular segment. Now, the middle column is looking only at those sessions that included the add to cart event. But still, all other events of those sessions are included. If a session does not have an add to cart event, then this session is ignored and all those events are ignored. But if a session has at least one add to cart event, then the entire session and all events of that session will be included. And then the event segment includes only data of that event. No other event is included in this segment. All right, now let's take a look at other features in the segment builder. So let me click the plus next to segments, create new segment, and then I will select a user segment. So as you have seen here, you can insert certain conditions. So far, we have done basic conditions like, just selecting a particular event name. But if you want, you can be more specific. For example, you want to look only at those visitors who have looked at a particular page. So then you can enter, let's say, page location, and then be more specific by adding a condition that the page URL must contain maybe sale or something like that. Then apply. And then you will see the preview. Of course, right now, I assume that there is no active page with this URL, therefore we don't have a lot of data. If you want, you can also combine multiple conditions. For example, if you want to look at the data of visitors who match one condition or another, you can click or, and then add another, for example, page location, which contains, let's say, this URL right here, and apply. Alternatively, you can look for multiple conditions. They all must be met. And then you can tell analytics within what scope do you want to work. Let me show you what I mean. So let's say that I want to look at those users who have seen this page and another page. Let's say it contains this right here. And this is the scope that I can control. I can tell Google Analytics that it should be looking at all sessions of users. So if in one session the user sees this page and then in another session this page, it's still fine. But I can also narrow down and tell Google Analytics that I am looking only for both of these page views within the same session. And apparently, in this case, nobody in the same session looked at this URL or this URL. If it makes sense in your situation, you might also try to look at within the same event, even though in my case, technically it is not possible. You cannot view both pages at the same event.
By the way, did you know that I have a bunch of free ebooks on Google Tag Manager and Google Analytics? So if you want to better learn these topics, then click the link below the video, download those ebooks, and get started.
Another quite useful feature is sequences. For example, you can look at the data of those visitors who complete events in certain sequence. So first of all, let me remove these conditions right here. And instead, I will create a sequence. And I can add one step, then another step, and so on. For example, let's say that I want to look at that traffic where the visitor first looked at any blog post, for example, and then made a purchase within a certain period of time. So here I can look at the page view event where page location contains blog. I think in this particular demo website, there are no pages with this URL, but let's just imagine that there is. So I will click apply. And then I add another condition where we have a purchase event. Or maybe in your case, it would be something like form submission or generate lead or something like that. And then another cool thing here is that I can select time difference between these two steps. Because if I don't add any time constraints, it means that maybe a user viewed a blog post in January, but then made a purchase like 12 months later, which is not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a short period of time. Let's say a page view happens, and then within an hour or 2 hours, a purchase happens. So then I could add time constraint right here, and then set, let's say, 60 minutes and confirm. Also, another important thing to mention is this section right here, which allows you to select the relationship between these two steps. You can choose either is indirectly followed by or directly followed by. In 99.9% of situations, you will be using is indirectly followed by. So this is your default option, and in most cases, it should remain that way. Because if you select is directly followed by, it means that this event must directly come after the page view. So if you have a page view and then between purchase and page view, there is any other event like click, scroll, or whatever that you're tracking in your property, then that user will not be included in this sequence. That's why normally I use indirectly followed by, because I don't care whether there were any additional events between these two steps right here. Another example could be that maybe you're tracking some banners on your website. So if someone clicks a banner and then submits a form, you could create a sequence for that. The only problem that I have with sequences is that they are available only in the user scoped segments. Unfortunately, you cannot create session segments with sequences. And I really wish that we had that opportunity. Anyway, another feature that you might find useful is this. If you are running Google Ads and you have linked Google Analytics to Google Ads account, then you can create audiences based on your segment. When you create an audience and it populates enough data, that audience will be available in your Google Ads account, and you will be able to show ads to that particular audience. So to do that, first let's create a sample segment. Let's say that I want to include those who viewed a promotion. By the way, this event is not available out of the box in most properties. This particular property is tracking that event, but you must implement this kind of tracking if possible. So basically with this audience, we look at those who viewed a promotion. In fact, if this was a real life project, I would probably make it more specific and add additional conditions to include only specific promotion. And then I want to exclude those who did not buy. So basically I'm interested in those who saw the promotion but did not buy. And now I want to show ads to them. So let's exclude those who made a purchase. And here I will include the purchase event like this. So those who viewed a promotion but did not make a purchase. And now if I want to create an audience based on this segment, I can click three dots right here, create an audience. All those conditions will be recreated here. If I want, I can do some additional tweaks here. And then you need to select the membership duration. If a user saw a promotion but did not make a purchase in the last, let's say 180 days, then I want that user to be included in the audience, and later I will show ads to that particular audience. So here, if I click save, that audience will be saved. Of course, in this particular property, I don't have enough permissions. That's why I got the error. But if this was my property, then this would have been saved. And the audiences are available then in the admin panel, and then audiences right here. So here are some audiences already created in this property, and that audience would have been available here as well. Now let me give you a couple of more ideas of what kind of segments can you build. So again, I will go back to the exploration, click my latest exploration, and then let's say that you want to look at those visitors who are highly engaged. And in your case, let's say that you internally agree that highly engaged visitors are those who have generated at least 5 pages in a session. And I mean 5 page views. This could be done by creating a session segment where you enter the event name, like page view, and then here in the add parameter, you select event count and greater than 4, which means 5 or more. And here I see a preview of 14,000 users who have generated 5 or more page views in a single session. Then another example could be that maybe your website has a login feature and you're tracking a login event. This would allow you to look at those sessions where users have not logged in and maybe compare them against sessions where users have logged in. In this particular property, they are not tracking the login event, but technically the principle would be the same, where you add login, then you would have selected the login event, and then this segment would include those who have logged in, and then alternatively, you could create another segment where you exclude the login events. So in general, right now, after you complete watching this video, I would highly recommend for you to play around and look at various settings. Even though I have covered most of them, maybe you will find something new or some use cases relevant to your business. Because the best way to learn how to use this is to actually practice. By the way, a quick tip is that if you want, you can also get access to this demo property, which is the official Google Analytics demo property. This will allow you to play around with the real data if you don't have access to any other real property at the moment, but you still want to learn. So if you want to get access to this particular demo property, I will post a link below this video with instructions. And that's how you can use segments in Google Analytics. If you want to learn more about them, including more practical use cases, then take a look at my Google Analytics course. I will post a link to it below the video. If you found this video useful, hit the like button. That will help me understand what videos do you like and what should I create in the future. Also, if you want to learn more about Google Tag Manager or Google Analytics, then subscribe to this channel. My name is Julius, this is Analytics Mania, and I'll see you in the next video.